Hey guys, today we're going to show you how we installed our Vancillary Headliner Shelf into our Ford Transit. This is the kit that will arrive in the mail from Vancillary. It's got the brackets and the hardware as well as the instructions that you just find using the QR code, and of course the template. So it's about $130 and we think it's well worth it because it saves a ton of time and it gives you a very accurate piece to put in your van. The first step is to cut the straight edge of the shelf body, and you want to cut along the line. Now you're going to cut along the outside of the perimeter of the rest of the shelf body, but leave ½ inch of space along the outside. And our Transit does not have a center support, so we will not be cutting that out. We are using ½ inch Baltic birch. You need a minimum of 5 foot by 3 foot of piece of wood, and they recommend Baltic birch or bamboo plywood. The next step is to tape this template onto your wood using clear packaging.
Now that we have the template secured to the plywood, I'm just going to use a jigsaw to cut it out following the outer edge.
We're bringing in the shelf body to the van to do a quick little test fit. Looks pretty good. As you can see, it really maximizes as much space as you can get from this top area.
Next step is using a 7mm bit to remove the screws on the existing little headliner piece. Once you have the screws out, then place the bracket so that the flat portion with the holes we see is up. You want to be careful not to over tighten the front small one that's closer to the windshield. Now that we have the brackets in, I'm just putting the shelf back in, position it exactly where we want, and just use a Sharpie or a pencil to mark the 3 hole locations. So these ones on the outside, and then in the corner, you need to use some pliers or something like this to get it right to the back. Same thing on the other side. To get these out, you just need to pinch them top and bottom, and then pull out, and then you'll be able to see the last center hole there. And you go back to the Sharpie method on this. So we got all 7, we can take it out and drill them out. I'm going to use a 9/32 drill bit for the center one. If you don't have the exact bit, then oversize, and then I'm going to use a 7/32 drill bit for the 6 outer ones. So even though we're going to be using fabric, it's important to do the holes first. Katie can glue the fabric on and then punch out these holes so that once we get in the van we can just bolt it in and it'll be all finished. We're not quite finished yet. We still have to cut out the little flange piece and secure it onto the end.
We've moved on to the flange now, so I've cut the end off of each flange template on each side because, as you can see, it's a little bit angled. We're going to make our flange 2¼ inches high instead of the 1½ proposed from the template. So we do need to follow that angle further, and that is why the edge is so important. So I've taped it down so it doesn't move, and I'm just going to trace along the edge here. So I'm just going to follow that one angle up now with the ruler.
Attaching this front flange piece to the headliner, I'm just gonna pre-drill it with a countersink bit, and then we'll use 1" number 6 screws to secure it in like so before Katie puts the fabric on.
So now we're on to the fun part, covering the headliner with fabric. I'm using 2 fabrics. On the top layer, of the shelf, I'm going to be using just plain black fabric. And along the front as well as the underside, which is going to be more visible from the inside of the van, I'm going to be using a dark charcoal. Both of these fabrics are relatively thin, and I would suggest using something that is thin if you're doing one continuous piece or as few pieces as possible, just because you're going to be wrapping around the corners, along the edges as well, and you really don't want to make sure, or you really want to make sure it doesn't bubble up or show some fat seams or anything like that. So I've sanded down the wood to get rid of any big chunks hanging out. And you are going to have these holes throughout that you drilled, so and you're going to be just punching through them later. So keep that in mind. Don't go too thick for that reason either on the fabric. You want to be able to kind of feel them. So my plan is to have the inside edge butt up against the front lip, and then have the charcoal piece wrap around the top and bump right up against this inner black piece. Like so. That'll be glued first, and then I'll glue it down so that it's not a raw edge, and it's just a nice transition between the charcoal and the black. For this project, I'll be using Lion Grip, a high temperature, high strength spray adhesive. We use this for all of the fabric in our van, like the vinyl on our rear pillars. It stands up really well to high temperature, as the name suggests, and it's really strong. So I have a really nice straight line between the fabric and the upright wood piece. To make this a little bit more manageable, I'm going to cut along the perimeter of the black fabric and leave about 1 inch of wiggle room. And I'm going to get some heavy stuff to weigh down my fabric. Now I'm left with the fabric that I'm going to use for the inside layer. So I'm going to pull up half of it just to the side and just work with half at a time using the Lion Grip. That way it stays exactly where it is and doesn't shift around. If I take the whole thing off and spray it, it's really hard to position it because, like I said, once the two surfaces that have the spray adhesive are in contact, then they no longer can separate, and that can really botch your project. Now we do the same thing on the other side. With how that turned out. And now I'll be moving on and doing the bottom side. I'll be doing the same as last time in terms of doing half of the surface at once. This time I'll be doing the front half and just lifting the fabric up lengthwise. And that's just because I left an extra 2 3/4 of fabric on the very end, and that's to account for the 2-inch rise, or the 2 1/4 inch rise on the inside of the backing, and also the 1/2 inch thickness of the fabric. So this is my plan. I've cut down each of the fabrics to about 1 inch away from the edge of the board. Then I'm going to be folding them in half on each other and then onto the face or the butt end of the board. Because the edges aren't visible, I'm actually going to be using a stapler to secure the fabric onto the butt end. It'll ensure that the fabric stays put, and it'll give me some flexibility rather than gluing it and then having to hold it for a little bit while I glue further down. This is going to be pressed against the van so you won't see it. Underside is charcoal, top is black. Alright, we're on to the flange now. So I've marked out where 2 1/4 inches is. So just in a bunch of dashed lines on the inside of the fabric. And that is where I'm going to fold the fabric to create a clean seam. The 2 1/4 inches is to make up for the wood that's exposed. So up there and through here. And then I'll just be folding it over after. That's it for the fabric part. I'm quite happy with how it turned out. I'm gonna find the holes that we had for the brackets, punch them through, and then we can get ready to put it in the van. Now with the headliner in place, you're gonna get your hardware kit and use the 6 3/4 inch machine screws, nuts, and the washer on 3 of the holes on that side of the bracket, 3 of the holes on this side of the bracket, and then in the center hole, you'll be using the 1 inch machine screw. Following the diagram on the instructions, you're going to put the machine screw through the bracket, through the wood, and then on the top you're going to put your washer and your nut. So that's what they look like once they're in place, and then just make sure that you tighten them using a ratchet. I've been using a screwdriver to hold the machine screw head, and then a ratchet, a 3/8 inch ratchet head to tighten the nut.
So that's the final product. As you can see, it looks pretty clean with the factory seats, and it leaves lots of headroom for getting in and out of the passenger and driver seats. And that's often one concern. I don't really find it to be any issue coming in and out of the cab area, and we really like it when we have the closed off curtain here that you can easily access the back, but still have some extra room here and even grab it from when you're sitting in the driver's seat. As always, we hope you found this video helpful. We'll leave the link to the Vancillary Headliner Shelf in the description below.
If you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the comments. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel. We'll see you next time.